Welcome, everybody. This is John Paul Mendoza, Dr. Speed Selling. This is the Raging Verbalist number 149. If this is your first time, welcome. If you're an old-time veteran, that's great. Make sure that you are a subscriber. Make sure you hit the like button, notifications, all of those things that YouTube wants you to do. Also, we're available on Facebook through Position to Win Book. With me, as always, is the ever lovely Sandra. She stands in for you and asks the questions that probe my mind. All right, Sandra, welcome.
Hello, how are you?
I'm doing well, and notice her surroundings are nice. She is continuously improving them. Eventually, I think we'll see who knows what behind you. It's it's almost like maybe we should have a contest and have people guess. So what part is missing? What has shown up? What is new? Like one of those, when they show two pictures and you got to find the things that are not there, something like that.
That sounds good. I'll put a
Yeah,
different animal on the stand behind me or something.
that's it. And you have that's either that's a bird, right?
Yes, a
Okay,
crane.
a crane. Yeah.
Yes.
There you go. All right. Well, so what are we going to go over today? What is on the tip of your tongue?
All right, so we're talking about remote work. So, what is your opinion about all of these companies demanding that people come back to their cubicles or else?
Well, I think it's kind of this overreaction. And what has happened is that a lot of these companies did not pay really close attention to these people when they were working remotely. And because of it, they ended up having them, it's a little bit like having, a herd of animals, though you would be more familiar than I would. But, I've seen this with horses when I was born and raised in Colorado, and horses would like go and do whatever horses are going to do, which is why you have to corral them. That's how, they ended up, wandering all over North America. So you have to just really kind of corral people and keep track of them. And I think that there was too much of a sense of set it, forget it. Everybody's going to figure this out and leave it alone. So I think that this is an overreaction to that. And the, come back or else, depending upon what their specialty is, there's a lot of people who are going to say, well, maybe I'll take the or else part, which would, I think, be a great shame, because I think it'll be a talent drain that would take place when that happens.
All right, and is it true that most people can't work remotely?
Well, I know that there are people who cannot, and I have experienced both sides of it. But I would say that a lot of times that is kind of a mythology. What you have to do, though, is you have to not think that everybody's going to be able to figure this out. And, it's one of the reasons why when we put together the book, Remote Work for a Better World, though we were talking about not specifically soup to nuts, but we were talking about what to do during the pandemic. But for the most part, I think that no one really sits down and says, okay, this is what we expect you to do. This is how we do it. And how do we keep track of it? So I think that it was really a decided lack of planning that made people think that, well, some people can't work this way. And I do agree that there are people who cannot. There are people who are not self-starters, and without that pressure of being in a location and having people walking up and kind of giving you the old eye, are you working or not? Then you're not going to be able to do that. So yeah, I think that there are people. I think it's a much smaller number than you would expect, but I think that for the most part, everybody can learn how to work remotely.
And what are the three biggest mistakes organizations have made being thrown into remote work?
So for the most part, remote work or working from your house or working from wherever you were physically located was one of those things that most companies kind of frowned upon. Now, early on in my career, since I was out selling technology and then managing teams of people selling technology, I moved out of my office like in 1987 and never moved back in to an office, even though companies would rent me an office. And part of it was the fact that I just didn't want to drag stuff back and forth and back and forth. And I had built out an office in my house that was much better than any office anybody was going to give me. So the mistake that people made is that they weren't really prepared. They hadn't thought about it. So they just kind of said to everybody, okay, here's what we're going to do. So if we want to go through the big mistakes, let's talk about the three biggest mistakes. Number one is that this isn't give everybody a laptop and say, there you go, we've outfitted you with whatever you need to be able to work remotely. A laptop is something that's been around for a long time. Most people have one from their job or from their business or something. And, that's fine, but that isn't enough. That would be a little bit like saying, here, I'm going to give you a pen and a sheet of paper and at some point in time and saying, there, you've got your office. No, it's got to be more than that. So I think the biggest mistake was not understanding that they were going to have to buy equipment and they were going to have to help people outfit whatever area that we're going to have as their remote work location. Second biggest mistake is the fact of not having enough bandwidth. Everybody says high speed, and I don't care if you say high speed internet or high speed Wi-Fi. That is a non-existent term, really, in my mind. I have been at places like in Vegas, and they say, well, we've got high speed, then you got deluxe high speed, which we're going to charge you $12 a day, and it is pitiful. I mean, it's just ridiculous. And I think that that's a big mistake because companies, especially, and we'll just talk about companies that have people out there, is that if your team doesn't have enough bandwidth, doesn't have enough speed, they're going to really, it's going to suck. They're just not going to be able to do a very good job. And for the most part, what they're going to do is they're going to flounder because they always have things crapping out. And in fact, since this is a kind of a long running rant of mine, all you have to do is go watch cable news. And I watch it, the business channel, I have it running in the background often. And then you watch somebody doing the remote and they're coming in via a Zoom or a SteamYard or whatever. And they're coming in and they're jittery and they're fluttering and they're stumbling and they're doing all of that. Big mistake, which means that they don't even know what they're supposed to have. Quick funny story is that when the pandemic kicked off, I was asked to speak to a group of entrepreneurs. That in itself is that unique, but they were all actually in Peru. And the thing about it is that when I went to do that, is that the woman in charge of this had me do a speed test, and she had all of these prerequisites that I needed to meet. And what I found out later, now understand, I don't speak Spanish, but what they did was they had people who are listening to it in English, and that they would later translate it for other people. Well, so many people got onto that same conference that they had to be careful and limit it because they only had so much bandwidth going into the entire country of Peru, which I understand. So that's a big mistake. People not thinking, hey, we got to figure out and make sure people have a big enough pipe. And if anybody's ever had a garden hose, especially when you were little, and boy, it was working great. And then in my case, my older brother would stand on the garden hose and you go, whoa, what's wrong? And then splash water all over your face, rumble, rumble, rumble. Well, all I can tell you is that's the same thing that happens with people when they are doing anything like this. In fact, this is why we've actually had to change the Raging Verbalist over time to make sure that we could live within the means of the bandwidth that we have, especially when I'm on the road. So that's the second big mistake. And the third one is you have to make sure that people have a space that they can actually work out of. Working off of the kitchen table while little Billy and Sally or whoever are eating cereal in the morning, may work as a novelty, but you really have to figure out how to give people space so they can actually get stuff done. Interruptions cause what? Disruption. Interruptions cause disruptions. And no, I'm not trying to be lyrical, but it just is amazing to me how many people do not understand this. I mean, these are supposedly adults and they don't get it and they don't understand it and they don't put any thought into it. So you have to have a space. And when you're doing it, you have to tell everybody, listen, I'm working and this is what's paying the bills. So everybody shut up. And that needs to happen.
All right, so is it all dark and dreary, or are there things that can be done?
Well, interestingly enough, we're seeing a very rapid explosion in the speed of accessible internet at relatively cheap prices. So what you can do is you can ramp up your, how much bandwidth you have. That's number one. Number two is that, we know how people screw this stuff up, such as, oh, let's see, don't have a fast enough computer to be able to do Zoom. Now you're going to say, John, all computers can do it. Well, we actually, when we wrote Remote Work for a Better World, I had a technical person who I trust a great deal, and he went out and he did some interesting testing for us, and he put he put this stuff to the test. And what did he find? Well, he found that there were lots of machines that don't have nearly enough horsepower to run Zoom. And by the way, the people who are at Zoom, I give them kudos, but understand they aren't going to make this work to the lowest common denominator, because people want more features, more bells, more whistles, takes more capacity. There is no switch inside of it that I've been able to find. And in fact, we wrote a book about it that says, hey, I got nothing, give me the bare minimum. So there's that. And then the other thing that can be done concrete wise is make sure that whoever you're dealing with who says, yeah, I know about using Zoom or whatever they're going to use, is that they actually test it ahead of time. Nothing worse than people doing this kind of mistake of thing. Now, I will tell you, one of the worst Zoom meetings I ever had is I was doing an interview. I've done lots of interviews over the years with a guy, and he's the guy who set the time. And he complained as we get on the call about how we were doing it so early in the morning. He set the time. Second thing is that he had, I don't know what he had on, some kind of, weird, funky thing. And he changed his shirt while we were getting ready to do the interview. After that, which by the way, I mean, he didn't understand that you can turn off the camera, but I guess he just wanted to show me that he was he wasn't a robot or something. And then he proceeds to lay down on his bed and prop up his laptop so we have a direct line of sight into his cranium, into his head, so we can see, I don't know. Last thing I want to do is see somebody's, get nostril cam going. And then it gets even worse, because guess what he did? And I know this is supposed to be, dark and dreary, but not dark and dreary. And on top of that, he has his kids bouncing on the bed, and I don't, we'll leave his name out because I don't want to talk about the guilty. Part of doing an interview with me, part of getting this publicity, is that he was out trying to get more investors. I wouldn't give this guy change to go buy a bag of fries. I mean, wow, talk about disorganized. So I don't think it has to be totally dark and dreary. In fact, I think there's some positives. One of the things you can do is you can go out and check out the book, Remote Work for a Better World, available exclusively on Amazon. Is it dated? Because people will say, well, geez, have things changed? Yes. But there are so many fundamental things that we talk about. We talk about how to interview people for jobs. We talk about how to help people understand what they have to do. And we talk about how to really set things up for remote work. I am so surprised that even today, people don't know what they really could do and to improve things. And especially if you're going to be on television, wow, make sure that you got everything buckled down tight, know what you got. It's astonishing, all of those things. But if you read Remote Work for a Better World, available exclusively on Amazon, you can learn a bunch of things. Also, you can go to positiontowinbook.com and you can check out our original book, which is Most Businesses Fail in the First 5 Minutes. It just takes them 3 to 5 years to realize it. Position to Win. Check it out. It's available in soft copy, so it's available as a physical book. Also, it's available with Kindle, Nook, and Apple iBook. So all of that is possible if you want to do that. And I'm going to say right now, shamelessly, that if you read the book and you actually apply some of these things, because I see mistakes every single day, astonishingly, people haven't figured out some of these things, even though we're way down the road. Zoom fatigue, yeah, you know where it comes from? Lousy production values. That's probably the hardest thing. And the thing we didn't necessarily cover in the book, which if we ever do another version of the book, which who knows, maybe we will, but I can tell you one thing. People make a giant mistake because they do not think in terms of that they are really doing a video production. Okay, so Sandra, what is next as we march forward?
All right, so since you've offered a ray of hope, are there some concrete things that organizations can do?
Number one, look to upgrade the equipment, and that isn't just buying a laptop, maybe buying a better web camera, buying a better microphone, buying better lights, buying some of those things. Number two is training people on how to do these things remotely, how to be more organized. See, if you're going to work remotely, you've got to really get your act together and be organized. My suggestion for anybody who's dragging stuff around is that, go out and buy a whole big bunch of bankers boxes so you can carry stuff around. If you say, well, John, I don't really do that, I don't need to do that. Yeah, you do. The third thing that you can do for remote work is make sure that you have a desktop scanner. I know we can use your phone, we can use your tablet. I'm telling you, desktop scanner, you can scan stuff in, get access to it. Next step is find a great database, way to collect this data. I happen to use Evernote, and no, we don't get paid for it, but I like it a lot. I've been using it for like 12 years, so I can tell you that it has a lot of capabilities. Figure out what works for you. And the final concrete thing is that it isn't a set and forget. We're going to have to spend more money down the road. And I know that you probably have an accounting department, some pencil neck geek who's going to say, well, we already bought this or bought that. Computers don't last like they used to. Nobody wants a 5-year-old computer. Well, they get stuck with it. But I mean, you got to think in terms of this stuff, you need to upgrade it because everything is taking more and more bandwidth, processing power, all of the above.
And are there things that managers can do?
Well, the first thing a manager has to do is set the tone. So one of the things, since I have been managing remote work or remote teams of workers, is that make sure that you have people check in the morning. So, I have people who text me or WhatsApp me or something like that. We don't use email for that purpose. Maybe you want to use Slack, but make sure that you have ways to communicate with people because that makes it feel like you're more connected. If they're going to take breaks or lunches or do whatever is required, make sure that they tell you, hey, this is what I'm going to do. Communications is really critical. And managers that communicate well get more done when they're working with remote workers. There is and this is something that managers must do, is there is a serious potential of isolation when somebody doesn't talk to somebody or isn't seeing somebody. These are the people who probably can't really work by themselves, is that people get lonely. They want that social interaction. They want to know, it's kind of hard to hang out by the, microwave if there's nobody to talk to by the microwave. So my suggestion is that you have to figure out how to accommodate that. And the final thing is that managers should set up weekly, my suggestion, weekly meetings. So you bring the team together and by the way, make sure that you start on time, make sure that you have an agenda that you actually stick to, and make sure that you know what you're going to do. And it just isn't kind of like people babbling along and saying, hey, what do you do, Harry? What do you do, Charlie? What are you doing, Sally? What are you doing, Betty? You got to nail this stuff down. So that's what managers can do. And make sure that they monitor what people are supposed to do and how they're supposed to do it.
All right. And what can somebody do individually?
Well, individually, I think since we have such an amazing collection, YouTube is like phenomenal resource, is that plan on watching at least one video a day to improve your skill set. And it isn't that your company is going to pay for it. It isn't that somebody's got the thumb screws to you to make you do it. And I know that there's lots of distracting videos, whether it's, cats or, who knows what kind of titillation or whatever it happens to be. But go watch something. Like, that's how I learned how to utilize Evernote better. That's how I learned how to utilize Zoom better. Even though we wrote a book about Zoom, I watch about tricks and techniques and capabilities and learn how to do that. So individually, you should commit yourself that you should learn something new every day. And if you're going to watch a video, in my opinion, you don't want to sit there and watch the video. Sit back, fold your arms, and kind of like zone out. I mean, really engage, learn step by step what's going on, and apply those things. So individually, you can do that. And I think first off, you're going to get more, more capability and better experience. And then lastly, for an individual, is that being organized and spending time becoming better organized. Organization, a lot of times people will believe, is you build a system, you get everything organized, and it stays put together. Organization is where you kind of line everything up. When I had 19 salespeople managing for a client, I can tell you that my vision of that was probably very different than an MBA program would think. I thought of myself as being in a circus clown car, with the big giant oversized shoes and a rainbow afro. And I'm driving, and I had all my salespeople, all my sales individual producers in the vehicle. And every once in a while they would fall out. You'd have to whip that U-turn and toss your clown back in the car and keep driving. To me, that's what you got to do. You got to keep throwing the clowns back in the car. You got to keep organizing this stuff. And if you're an individual, organization is key. If you're going to talk to your boss, talk to customers, talk to your colleagues, talk to somebody at corporate, talk to somebody anywhere, talk to whoever you have to talk to, sit down and put together a list before you call and talk to them, so it doesn't become a babbling brook fest.
And is the deck stacked against small to medium businesses?
The amazing part about the way the internet is set up today and the speeds and power and performance you can buy is that you actually can do what a lot of big companies just a few years ago would struggle to do. And therefore, you can accomplish more than ever before. So I don't think the deck is stacked towards small and medium businesses. They are at a decided disadvantage on one side because they don't have as much money, may not have as many resources. That means you have to be smarter, cleverer, and faster than the other side. And on the plus side, though, is you have less bureaucracy. And if you get really good clarity, you can implement something much quicker and therefore satisfy customers and do things that are not expected in the marketplace, and in fact become rewarded because of that. So it's a double-sided piece, but I would say small to medium companies, if they're smart, see this as an advantage, not a disadvantage. This is where whenever we're building companies, we're looking for talent anywhere. Where is that talent? Is that talent in Omaha, Nebraska? Is it in South Dakota? Is it in Texas? Is it in, Florida? Where is that talent? We look for talent everywhere because we know that we can utilize the best capabilities of that talent and get further for less than we would if we had to say, okay, we're stuck with this geographical location and we can only pick people from right here.
And if you had a magic wand, how would you fix some of these issues?
Well, my magic wand would be for all those people who are going to go on television, these erudite, really smart people, and have somebody who's quasi-technically good at something, and make sure that we don't ever have one of these people who are blurry, who have no idea what they look like, what they sound like. I have seen people who have had their top of their heads cut off. I've seen people who are, they're just a mess. If you're going to set something up, make sure that you look at the background, look at what's sitting there, look at what's going on around you. So give yourself some thought. And I would say probably the biggest magic wand is that Zoom allows you to put up a virtual background. I'm using one of those. In fact, we've used two during this call, We set those up for clients ourselves, but you can do this yourself. Make sure that you go out there and you get yourself a background, because boy, that would have saved a lot of these embarrassing people who had some of the worst things I've ever seen, and all that. And if you do all of that, what you're going to find out is that you're going to be in a better position than ever before. Remote work is not the culprit. Bad performance in remote work is actually a symptom of other issues. Now, they may be masked when you have everybody huddled together and driving in and sitting at a location, but those bad habits, lack of organization, lack of awareness, lack of the fact that this whole communications methodology that has been kicked off utilizing video is not going to go away. And you want to get better at it. You want to get stronger at it. And what you want to do is get it to a competitive advantage. Just today, in another business that I'm in, somebody said, listen, I don't want to do a phone call. I'd like to do a Zoom meeting. Now, usually that means because they want to, check you out, make sure that they know what you look like, do some of those things. That's fine, because that's the direction we're all going to go in. You're going to have to accept the fact that we are going to live in I don't want to say virtual, but we're going to live in a direct video way. And when we do, what you're going to find is that those who excel at this are going to do better, and those who falter are going to do less. And that means that you can have a decided advantage if you go out there and become really good at it. I think that remote work offers a lot of promise. I think that a lot of businesses have fallen down on that, and they should view all of the mistakes that they've made so far and successes as phase one, or whatever number of phases you want to call it. But now, to get to remote work 2.0, you're going to have to step up the game in so many different ways. And if you do that, you'll become more successful. And that's what it's all about. Now, myself, John Paul Mendoza, Dr. Speed Selling, and the ever lovely Sandra, this has been the Raging Verbalist, number 149. We wish you great success. I hope you figure out how to do remote work, because it has so much promise, so much opportunity, and it has the potential to change your life and your business in a way that just a few years ago would have absolutely been science fiction and impossible. And until next week, we will see you at another exciting episode of The Raging Verbalist.